Having seen Lysander and the new Emperor's Shield detachment yesterday, now it is the turn of the other reveal we got, which is actually the new Raven Guard detachment, which is called the Shadow Mark Talon. And of course, their brand new character going along with that, which is the new Chapter Master for the Raven Guard and arguably contender for Model of the Year for some people, and that is Aethon Shaan. As before, we will look at his new datasheet first, and then we will look at the detachment. This one, as you may have been able to guess from the other two that we've seen so far, does take inspiration and is essentially a reimagining of one from the main Marine Codex, and in this case this is a revamped version of the Vanguard Spearhead, and it does keep that same stealthy, secretive set of rules and abilities, but like the other ones there are a few updates and changes just thrown in to make it a little bit different. First up though, let's look at Aethon. He is a brand new character, and as mentioned, he is the new Chapter Master after Caven Shrike stepped down to essentially just go and kill stuff without having to worry about the admin side of things. So Aethon is the new Chapter Master. He is quite similar to Caven, but does have a few key changes. He is still a toughness 4 5 wound model with a 3-up save and a 4-up invuln. He does have a very healthy 14-inch move, which means he can get around the board very quickly. He does also come with deep strike, stealth, and lone operative, so he can be incredibly difficult for your opponent to pin down and target, and even when the enemy does get within 12 inches of him to shoot him, he is still -1 to hit, so he can be a bit trickier to kill than they might expect. Generally, with his stat line and abilities, you should most of the time be able to get the charge off with him. Thanks to the combination of lone operative and a 14-inch move, he can get around the board really quite easily and safely and get to a nice distance where he is in a position to make that 14-inch move and then get the charge off. So he can be quite reliable at getting into the targets that you want him going into. But this can be made even more easy for you to do because he can be really sneaky thanks to his rule, the Blackwing Mantle. This allows him to use rapid ingress and also heroic intervention for 0 command points, and you can even use those on him if it's been used on a different unit in that phase. So he can very easily come down onto the battlefield in an enemy turn, for instance, or just disrupt enemy charging units by heroically intervening. So he really does have some very powerful, sneaky, stealthy tricks up his sleeve. The other rule he has is Master of Shadows. This allows you to pick an enemy unit in your command phase, and then until the start of your next command phase, all Astartes units in your army can re-roll charge rolls against that unit. But there is a little caveat here. They do have to declare that target as their charge target if it's at all possible. So this means that on the plus side, you can deep strike stuff in and it will have a 9-inch rerollable charge, which makes it that bit more reliable. But the fact that you do have to declare this target as your charge target for any Astartes units that are making a charge if they're within 12 inches of it, that can catch you out sometimes. And an example of this is, say Aethon wants to charge a target that will be 8 inches away from him after his move, so you pick that target to get the reroll charges for, then that's all fine and good for Aethon. He will have an 8-inch rerollable charge, but then rules as written, every other one of your units that is within 12 inches of that target does also have to declare it as their target. So even if you had a unit of, say, jump pack intercessors that were intending to charge another target that was maybe 3 or 4 inches away from them, but just because of your movement and how things were set up, they happened to be 11.5 inches away from Aethon's target, from your charge target, you cannot pick that initial target for them, the enemy unit that is 3 or 4 inches away. You do have to target and try a charge on that target you've picked as their part of this rule. So it can actually in some situations make a much harder charge for your unit, and if you are not careful, you can have a unit that was maybe really hoping to go into an enemy that was nice and close to them, but instead, because you've misplayed slightly, now has to declare a charge against a unit that is 10 or maybe even 11 inches away, so much less likely. So it's a really strong ability to get you a few units re-rolling charges, but you do have to be careful with it because the way it's written at the moment, you can potentially shoot yourself in the foot a bit if you misplay with your movement on your units. Despite that though, I do think it's a good rule overall. And then on the melee front, Aethon also has quite a lot of power. He is very, very scary against infantry. He's similar to Caven, but I think slightly better. He has the Claws of Severax, and that gives him 7 attacks at strength 5, minus 2 AP and 2 damage. They also have twin linked and sustained hits too, so he can do a lot of work into infantry. If you go into an oathed target of, say, marine profiles, he will look to do about 12 damage, so he will kill off about 6 marines. He will also kill off like 8 or 9 orc boys if you go into them. He is of course less good into vehicles with only strength 5, but twin linked does help with that, and even into something tougher like a gladiator tank, he'll do about 4 damage. So no, he's not going to be one-shotting vehicles, but he can definitely chip off the last few wounds if you've injured it in your prior shooting phase or something like that. Compared to Caven, he does lose precision, which is a shame. Precision is always nice, but personally I think him getting those sustained hits too is better, and he is going to be insanely good at just going into big units of 10 marines or even 20 orc boys and just tearing them to pieces. In terms of his cost, I may be wrong, but I don't see his points anywhere. I don't think they've released them yet, which is a bit weird, so I don't know if we know how much he's going to be. But Caven is 100 points at the moment, and I imagine Aethon will probably be about the same. He does have a lot of similarities, so I would be surprised if he was significantly less or significantly more. And at 100 points, I think that makes him quite fun, quite fluffy. He's decent. He's very, very good at bullying enemy infantry units, so that is nice. The last part about his datasheet worth mentioning is he does have one final part of his rules, which says if you take him and Caven in the same army, he keeps the chapter master keyword, but Caven loses it because you can of course only have one chapter master, and instead Caven gains the captain keyword. He also loses his lone operative ability, which may sound like a big hit, but Caven could already join other units like jump pack intercessors or Vanguard vets, so it's not the end of the world. It just means you will have to put Caven with those if you want him to live, whereas Aethon will still get lone operative, so he can get all the tricks and benefits from that. On the detachment front, as I said, the Shadowmark Talon looks to be an updated Vanguard Spearhead. The main rule is Masters of Shadow, which is actually identical to the Shadow Masters rule from Vanguard, also pretty much just a reversal of the name. It gives you -1 to be hit if the enemy is over 12 inches away, and also gives your units the benefits of cover against those attacks. So this can actually make your army deceptively durable as you are moving up the board and getting into position. Essentially being -1 to hit and ignoring a pip of AP can blunt a lot of enemy shooting, even from quite shooting heavy armies. This will make a big difference. On top of that, you also get a second part of the detachment rule. Unparalleled Tactician means that if you have Aethon in your army, you can use the Into Darkness stratagem for 0 command points once per battle round if he's on the table, which, as we will see in just a second, can be quite a nice way to get some extra mobility in the army and also save some command points over the course of a battle. Now, like we've seen for the Salamanders and for the Imperial Fists, the enhancements do seem to be fairly similar to the original detachment they take their inspiration from. So we've got the Blackwing Shroud, which replaces the Blade-driven Deep enhancement. This gives the bearer and his unit Infiltrate. Umbral Raptor replaces the Ghost Weave Cloak. This grants the bearer Lone Operative and Stealth, which is nice. You can potentially get 2 fairly scary, fast-moving Lone Operative characters in this army between Aethon and then maybe something like a Chaplain with a jump pack, or even just any other character that you want sitting back and being safe, maybe guarding a home objective for the game. The Coronal Susurrant gives you essentially the Lord of Deceit aura. Not essentially, it does give you the Lord of Deceit aura, which is also copied from the Shadow War Veteran enhancement. This one has to go on a Phobos model, but it grants you a Vect style aura where you can increase the cost of stratagems that the enemy uses by 1 if they're within 12 inches of the bearer. This is a very strong and powerful tool to bring in an army, and especially on something that can be quite safe like a Phobos Lieutenant. This will be a great way to force your opponent to spend more command points over the battle, so they will have less for interrupts or rerolls or anything like that. Finally, the Hunter's Instinct enhancement is a new one. This allows the bearer's unit to be set up on the battlefield from reserves, and they count the battle round as one higher than it actually is, so letting you set up on the battlefield a turn sooner or come onto the battlefield in a more convenient place for you that turn quicker. So again, it's quite a handy tool and quite a powerful tool for a fast moving, sneaky army where you can be doing some movement tricks and bring stuff onto the battlefield where your opponent isn't expecting it. So I think that can work very, very well in this detachment. In terms of the stratagems, again, there is some copied ones. You do get Armor of Contempt, of course, but then Stunning Fusillade replaces Strike from the Shadows. This gives you a pretty nice bonus of +1 ballistic skill and +1 AP when an infantry unit shoots at an enemy unit that is over 12 inches away, and it also forces a battle shock test if the enemy unit loses any models from that shooting. So that can be quite a nice way to get some extra accuracy and also get through a bit more armor into a tough enemy that might be coming towards you. Lay Low the Tyrants gives an infantry unit precision in melee, which is the same as the Surgical Strike stratagem from the main detachment. This can be very, very good. Putting this on something like some Terminators or even Vanguard veterans with their scary number of attacks can lead to a lot of melee going into an enemy, and a lot of it that you will be able to put onto enemy characters. So it can be quite a scary way to kill off enemy characters before they maybe get to swing. The last one that is actually copied over from the Vanguard detachment is the new Into Darkness strat. This is a replacement for Guerrilla Tactics, and it gives you some uppy downy tricks. So you can pick 2 Phobos or Scout units or 1 other infantry unit, and at the end of the enemy fight phase, you can put them into strategic reserves. What makes this better in this detachment, of course, as we saw just a few minutes ago, is that you can do this for free if Aethon is on the field. So getting up to 2 units, some extra mobility and movement around the battlefield at the end of the enemy turn, bringing them back on so they can score you some objectives or get you some secondary points much more easily is very, very powerful. And being able to do it for free once per battle round does make this a strat you will probably be using every single battle round of the game. In terms of totally new stratagems though, Raptorial Vigilance is one command point. This allows an infantry or mounted unit from your army that's within 9 inches of an enemy unit after that enemy unit has finished a normal advance or fall back move to make a d6-inch reactive move. This also becomes a flat 6-inch move if you use this strat on a Phobos or a Scout unit, so being able to make that reactive move to get onto an objective or behind some line of sight blocking terrain or just to make a charge that much harder is incredibly strong. It has a lot of potential to leave an enemy unit totally out of position and exposed so that in your next turn you can light it up with some shooting. So a really, really good, useful stratagem there. And then you also have Feint and Thrust. This is also one command point. It's in your movement phase. It gives a unit the ability to shoot and charge after falling back, or shoot and charge after advancing as well if it's a Phobos or a Scout unit. As always, advance and charge is amazing. It's maybe not so good on some of the Phobos units, but this can make Reavers into a potentially quite scary anti-character missile with their precision combat knives. I'm also pretty sure that the Warsuit is Phobos. I think it's got the Phobos keyword, and whilst it's not the scariest melee, it does have a pretty powerful punching fist attack, so giving that advance and charge could get that into combat a lot quicker. But even just aside from that, fall back and shoot can be great on some marine units. This doesn't specify it's only infantry either, so potentially something like a dreadnought or a tank that gets tied up could fall back. Something like some centurions that get tied up can fall back and still shoot. This can give you a lot of flexibility to avoid being bogged down by small chaffy units that may be trying to deny your shooting. So really, really powerful and a really good stratagem to add to the list that you have. Overall, I think this detachment feels, yes, very similar to the Vanguard, which is quite good because I don't think that's a terrible detachment. You do lose some tricks. You lose things like the sticky objectives that you got from a deadly prize, but getting, fallback, shoot and charge is very powerful. This can be fantastic on a lot of your range units, as I just said. You also get some really solid reserves rules with enhancements like the Hunter's Instincts. And I've just always loved the detachment rule. I think keeping your army safer from a lot of ranged armies in the game is really, really helpful. It can help you get around the board and keep scoring objectives even in the late game. If you've got something on your home objective and you just want it to stay alive as long as possible, that will help with that. It also means you will be safer as you move up the board and get into position, so you can bring the fight to your opponent on your terms a lot more easily. So I do like it. I think it's better than the Emperor's Shield that we saw yesterday. I do think it's better than the Forge Father's Seekers that we saw for the Salamanders. I actually think it might be better than the base Vanguard Detachment as well. So this one I do think will see some play. And if you are running a Raven Guard list, and especially if you are running Aethon, I think this will have a lot of teeth and power to run a Raven Guard list quite powerfully. As always though, I'd love to know what you think, whether you like this detachment or you think it needed a bit more. Let me know your thoughts and ideas down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later guys.